Genesis chapter 34 tells us the story of Jacob's only daughter. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. That was her first mistake. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and defiled her. And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel and spake kindly unto the damsel. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, Get me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very wroth, because he had wrought folly in Israel in lying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done. And Hamor communed with them, saying, The soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you give her him to wife. And make ye marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. And ye shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye therein, and get you possessions therein. And Shechem said unto her father and unto her brethren, Let me find grace in your eyes, and what ye shall say unto me I will give. Ask me never so much dowry and gift, and I will give according as ye shall say unto me, but give me the damsel to wife. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully, and said, Because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said unto them, We cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. But in this will we consent unto you, if ye will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised. Then will we give our daughters unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if ye will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then will we take our daughter, and we will be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem Hamor's son. And the young man deferred not to do the thing, because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father. And Hamor and Shechem his son came into the gate of their city, and communed with the men of their city, saying, These men are peaceable with us. Therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein, for the land, behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only herein will the men consent unto us for to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent unto them, and they will dwell with us. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearkened all that went out of the gate of his city, and every male was circumcised, all that went out of the gate of his city. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword, and came upon the city boldly, and slew all the males. And they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their sheep and their oxen and their asses, and that which was in the city, and that which was in the field. And all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives took they captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, Ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and I being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house. And they said, should he deal with our sister as with an harlot? I want to talk this morning about a good name, and we're all familiar with the scripture in Proverbs. It says a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. And oftentimes, that's what the choice comes down to, because one thing that will destroy your good name quicker than any other thing, or just about any other thing, is how you deal with money, how you deal in business, and how you deal with money, and whether or not you're deceitful. Well, let's look at this story. Jacob ended up by saying, you boys, by your rashness and your vengeance, your rage, your bloodshed, have ruined my name. Said, you have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Everybody's going to hear about this, and you've just caused my name to stink among all the inhabitants of the land. But the interesting thing to me is it all started with immorality on the part of Dinah and Shechem. They had a march, the Million Man March, and in Washington, and I heard both a good and an evil report. A good name and an evil name came out of that, depending on who you listened to. I didn't listen to the speeches. I read a few of the things that were said. But really, some of the black speakers, Farrakhan, admitted in so many words, many words, that blacks have a bad name and a bad reputation. And some of the things he said were good and true, in that he said, we're the only ones that can fix that. We need to rely on ourselves, especially speaking to the black men, saying we need to take family responsibility as fathers and become moral. What has given the blacks a bad name? Same thing that started this whole mess. Immorality. Immorality that leads to fatherless sons, fatherless children being raised, and which leads, especially in the case of sons who don't have a father to correct them, leads to high crime. And they talked about black-on-black violence. Most of it is young black men killing other young black men. And so they were admitting this and saying, we have to clean up our own house. I think it's a sad day that it had to be a Muslim that even organized. There were a lot of Christians that participated in that, and some of them spoke even, but it was a black Muslim that organized the whole thing. I wish it would have been some black Christian ministers that would have got together and been the impetus behind it, but it wasn't that way. It was a Muslim. It was a call for morality, and unfortunately he's mixing in some other error along with it, a call for black men to be responsible, because they're realizing if you get a bad name, you can have all the affirmative action you want to, but if you in that case as a race or an ethnic group has a bad name and a bad reputation, they're at a big disadvantage in all of life. People aren't going to want to do business with them, and a lot of people are going to avoid them, and so on, and they recognize there's value in a good name. There's more value than there is in silver and gold. Loving favor really is rather to be chosen, because that's what really, the things that make life worth living are the intangibles, as someone has said. The things like loving favor and a good name, a good reputation. It's not money or silver and gold or wealth or those things that really make life worth living. It's the intangible things, and the important one is a good name. Well, it all started with this immorality. But even there, that was just the starting point. Then the brothers reacted to it, and they took up an offense. David asked the question about who's going to ascend into the hill of the Lord, who's going to dwell in the holy place, who's going to make it to heaven. And one of the things he said is the man that does not take up a reproach against his neighbor. And what he's talking about there is a man who sees his neighbor done wrong, mistreated, offended, and he decides, well, I'm going to take vengeance for my neighbor. And that's exactly what these brothers did. In their view, Dinah had been done wrong. Of course, it was a one-sided view. Dinah's been done wrong. We're going to take vengeance for her. Well, if she's been done wrong, it's between her and the fellow that did it and God. And it was not their place. And furthermore, it was more Jacob's place. And even the men came to him and said, we'll pay whatever you ask. We'll pay dowry. We'll make up for this. And it was more Jacob's position to deal with this problem than it was theirs. So they got out from under authority. They took up an offense. Nothing had been done personally to them by this fellow, Shechem. But they said, we can't stand it that Dinah's been done this way. As I say, part of the responsibility, even in the first place, Dinah should not have went, and Jacob and her mother should not have allowed her to go. People wringing their hands in this country. What are we going to do about the problem of unwed mothers? In some cities, again, black community in Detroit, I read a few years ago, 80% of the babies, the black babies born in Detroit, were illegitimate. That's a scary statistic. So that's a breakdown in society. And it's going to have terrible consequences even in years to come. 80%. And there were all this hand-wringing. What are we going to do about all this? Well, we could learn from our great-grandparents. We could even learn from the foreigners. I remember in our high school Spanish book, it was an old book, but one of the things there was that a young lady did not go out ever with a young man unchaperoned. Never, ever. It was not, the expression was no es costumbre. It is not the custom. It's not customary. It's not done. Now that was an old book, an old textbook we were using, and that's been over 20 years ago, but that was their custom. In other words, just don't give them the opportunity to do that. Very simple. Don't let them do it. Now there's still going to be people who slip through the cracks, who sneak off and do things that they ought not. But when you send young teenagers out in cars alone, unchaperoned, you're asking for it. And it's not just the consequences. The consequences are devastating for them and their life because it's a bad foundation on which to start a marriage. But the consequences to the whole society are devastating in the future. And so that was part of the blame, you could say, rested with Dinah and with her mother and with Jacob, her father. There was a breakdown there. And also, but Shechem certainly had some blame on him. But these fellows, what caused the reputation, and Jacob ended up lamenting, my name is going to stink in the nostrils of all the inhabitants of the land, is the reaction of those boys when they took up a reproach and then they dealt deceitfully and then they took vengeance into their own hands rather than realizing that vengeance belongs to God. He will repay. They acted as though, and when they acted deceitfully, what they did is they told the truth but with an evil intent. The Bible tells us we need to speak the truth in love. And these fellows said, why, we can't marry you, and we can't take your daughters to us or give our daughters to you because of this matter of the blood covenant of circumcision. And that was true that they had that blood covenant, and they acted like, we're taking a stand for righteousness and holiness here, when really their intent was to kill and to take vengeance. What is the ulterior motive? We have to look at that in telling the truth. So they told the truth with an evil intent, and they took up this reproach for their sister. She was the youngest, and I get the picture that she was probably spoiled and protected, and these brothers, nobody's going to hurt. She's the only sister we've got, and she's the baby of the family, and how dare anybody hurt her? So there may have been a matter of favoritism there involved too. And anyway, these Simeon and Levi decided, we're going to kill them, every one of them, not just Shechem, the one that did it. We're going to kill them all. And that followed them years later in the future. Jacob, when he was blessing his sons, he brought that memory back up of this rashness and this cruelty of Simeon and Levi, this total lack of mercy on their part. And it had an effect on them and their children, and the blessing. It had an effect on the blessing they received from Jacob many years later. Don't think that you don't reap what you sow and that God doesn't take account, even though the rashness of their youth. That's what I see here. And I even think that's probably why Reuben, he was not as rash as some of the younger brothers. Reuben was the oldest, but he didn't participate in this massacre, and he wouldn't participate. He kept them from killing Joseph. When they all said, let's kill Joseph, then Reuben said, no, we don't want blood on our hands. He had a little more of a sense of responsibility, I guess, there being the firstborn. He said, we don't want blood on our hands. Let's cast him here into this pit. And his idea was, I'll sneak back later and I'll get him out and send him back again to his father. So at least there we have something good to say about Reuben. Of course, it may have partly been that Reuben ended up sinning in a sin. He ended up with moral failing in his own life on down the road. That may have been why he didn't react so strongly to this. Well, let's look at this thing of reputation and of a good name. All of these things will destroy your good name. And they'll destroy the good name, as I said, of whole groups, ethnic groups of people, whole races, as we call them, of people. Immorality, taking up a reproach, deceitfulness, taking vengeance yourself, taking matters into your own hands. All of these things will destroy a good name. Let's look over in Ecclesiastes chapter 7. This matter of a good name being likened unto a sweet smell, or a bad name, a stink, is, I was surprised, is found in different over and over again in Scripture. Again, you have a smell about you, in a figurative sense. And your good name is a good smell. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 1, dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honor. A wise man's heart is at his right hand, but a fool's heart at his left. Yea, also, when he that is a fool walketh by the way, his wisdom faileth him, and he saith to everyone that he is a fool. Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. Flies are little things. They're just little things. But you get a bunch of dead ones around, and they die in the ointment. This reminded me of one time I had some bees in a hive, and they recommended putting water. Well, I didn't know how to do it. I put a container of water there, but it was in such a way. Now, if you've ever opened a beehive, it has the sweetest smell to it. And anyway, I put this container of water in there, but it was in a way, they went down in there to get the water, and they couldn't get out, and the hole, it was just covered with dead bees. It was days later, and I checked on it, and it had the awfulest odor to it. Just little things, a little bit of folly on my part, and little bees, or in this case, little flies, it causes it to have a stinking savor. So doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honor. Sometimes the little things can destroy our reputation. Don't make any mistake about it. You might just cheat somebody out of a little money, or even if they think you've cheated them out of a little money. It's better to err on the side of right. Don't cheat on your income taxes. It's not worth it if they run an audit on you and catch you at that. Your good name. How many politicians, their good name has been destroyed because they didn't handle the money right. They cheated a little bit here and a little bit there. I remember one time I was doing my taxes, and there's so many laws and so many rules that it's hard a lot of times to know what is the right thing to do. And so I was doing this, and I thought, well, it seems to me that this is the right thing, and it would mean a lot more of a return, me a lot of money in my pocket. So I decided, well, this is how I'm going to do this. And that began to bother my conscience so much that I couldn't get it out of my mind, and on and on and on. And finally I decided, well, look, I'd rather pay the extra money and have the peace, and even if I don't owe it. And so that's what I decided then to do. It's better to err on the side of right than to do something questionable and shady and lose a good name or lose your own self-respect, the peace of mind and the peace of heart that you have. A little bit of folly will destroy a wise man's good name. That's the lesson in here. It's a good name, he said, it's like precious ointment. We don't realize how precious it is a lot of times until we lose it. Song of Solomon, again, this is associated with good ointment. Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 3. Because of the savor of thy good ointments, thy name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore do the virgins love thee. Song of Solomon 1 and 3. The savor of thy good ointments, thy name is as ointment poured forth. I look at this as thy good deeds have a sweet smell about them, and they cause thy name to have a good sound in people's ears. Job said, talked about the widows rejoiced when they heard, when he came by, or when they heard his name. He caused the hearts of the widows to sing. Why did Job cause the hearts of the widows to sing? Because he provided for them in their time of need. So he had a good name. And all those, quote, friends of his standing around accusing him and running him down could not destroy his good name. He maintained, he said, when they made an accusation, he said, well, when did I do that? Let's have a time and a place for this. Give me chapter and verse, so to speak. When did I ever do those things? And he was able to defend his good name. And it ended up, and this is the best part of all, God defended Job's good name.
Sure it is.
There are times when we have to give our reputation to God. We're in the midst of false accusation, as Job was, people accusing us, and other people standing by not knowing what to believe and just wondering, well, how is this all going to turn out? We can't always expect our friends to instantly rise to our defense. They don't always know what the truth is. Now, if they're a true friend, they'll say, well, we'll wait and see, and we'll try to listen to every side, and the truth will come out in the end. I remember hearing a man some years ago, he was talking about the government keeping secrets of their military secrets or scientific advances that they had made, inventions in the defense of this nation. And one of them was asked the question, he said, how long can you keep a secret like that? And the answer was, he said, well, our experience has been usually 1 year is the limit. If we discover how to shoot down the Russians' missiles or whatever the strategic defense initiative, we make some great scientific breakthrough, we're only going to keep that secret for 1 year. And then somehow, some way, it always leaks out. Somebody will tell. You get too many people involved on a secret, I don't care what it is, if it's top security, and somehow it's going to leak out eventually. And so it is with our reputation. You may suffer for a while with an undeserved bad reputation, but God can take it up, and He can do for you what He did for Job. He ended up saying, he had already declared in heaven, all those friends were ignorant of it, but he had already declared Job's good name to Satan and said, he's a perfect and an upright man. He fears me, hates evil, and there's none like him in the earth. Have you considered him, Satan? And Satan was the false accuser. But it ended up at the end of the book of Job, God came down and told Job's friends, you have not spoken that which is right concerning me, as my servant Job has. And so I want Job to pray for you. And it turned out that they ended up with the worst reputation than what Job did. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, again we have this talk of ointment. A good name. Ecclesiastes 7:1, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. Now, the reason I'm reading these other verses, you might say, how does that relate to a good name? I think all of these verses are keys to a good name. You may think that being the class clown is the way to be accepted and get a good name. But this is telling you it isn't. Not over the long run. And not with the righteous people of God. Sorrow is better than laughter. By sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This also is vanity. So many of this generation They always want to be amused and entertained all the time. And that's not the way to build character, and that's, in the long run, that's not the way to build a life, a Christian life, and it's not the way to have a good name, to be always entertained. There's a place for repentance and mourning and sorrow and all of these things here the rebuke of the wise. A man that hears rebuke, he'll end up with a better name than a man who wants to listen to music all the time, or laughter, or entertainment. That's what Ecclesiastes chapter 7 is telling us. Ecclesiastes 6:3, if a man beget 100 children and live many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with good, and also that he have no burial. I say that an untimely birth is better than he. If he begets 100 children, live many years, so the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with good. You want a good name? Fill your soul with good things, and fill your heart with good things. Have a good heart. Eventually, it's going to come out, and people are going to say, he has a good heart. I've told this before. I used to have two friends many years ago, and I said of the one, I said, he has a good head, and of the other one, he has a good heart, but he doesn't have much going on upstairs. And you know, the one with the good heart, to this day, the last time I talked with him, he's doing much better. You know what happened to the one with the good head who didn't have the good heart? His mind kind of snapped for a while, and he had a breakdown, a kind of a mental breakdown. It's more important to have a good heart, and as this says, that your soul be filled with good things. That's going to lead you on to a good name. There's no shortcut to a good name with the righteous. That verse I read about there in Song of Solomon said, therefore do the virgins love thee. What I'm concerned about having a good name is with the virgins, or figuratively speaking, with the righteous people of God. What do the holy people of God think of me? Now, what the sinner, or those that are atheists, or those that just want to attack all Christians and despise those that are good, that's not so important to me, what they think of me, because it's not based on truth or facts anyway. They're just making it up as they go along. But what the people of God think of me, and first and foremost, what God thinks of me. What kind of name do I have in heaven? That's the most important thing about a good name of all. Proverbs 10:6, blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. Proud and haughty scorner is his name, who dealeth in proud wrath. And so we find that wrath, a short temper, vengeance, violent reactions, jealousy, taking up an offense, all of these things, a little folly, was going to lead to a bad name. As I say, morality and money are the two biggest things that destroy a man's good name. Watch your dealings, especially in those areas, and even in the small things. You know, don't even flirt. Be careful in the small areas, because people talk, and a lot of people love to talk about bad things. They love to ruin people's reputation, and don't give them any fuel to do that with, is my advice. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. Oh, we work so hard for money. I'm through no choice of my own. I had to work 56 hours this last week. I took myself off the overtime list, and they still forced me to work. Well, we work so hard for that money. How hard are we working for a good name and a good reputation. Something for us to meditate on.